Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here and welcome to another video, and this is another one in which I take a look at someone within classic Hong Kong cinema, which is one of my dearest cinema epochs and niches, and look at another person who perhaps wouldn't be quite so well known to anyone who's not into that in a way, and as a bit of fandom for those who are. And previously, I've done one for Ng Yiu-Hon, and I also did one for Lam Ching-ying. And now I've picked the actor Ng Yiu-Hon in Cantonese, or Wu Yao-han in Mandarin, otherwise better known under his English name, Richard Ng. And he appeared in a lot of Sammo Hung's classic movies throughout the 80s in particular. And even if it wasn't a film that actually featured Sammo Hung off screen, Richard also featured in some in which Sammo was doing behind the scenes work, such as being a producer, such as for his Boho production company, for instance. And like Ng Yiu-Hon and in a way Lam Ching-ying, he's one of those that even if you don't know his name, you'd recognise his face every time you saw him. He's got a very distinctive look. And some of it actually likened him to Hong Kong's answer to Peter Sellers or Sammy Davis Jr., or even both combined. And in fact, in the film Miracles, the inspector that he plays in that has this sort of comedic stature about him that's not wildly dissimilar to that of Inspector Clouseau, as portrayed by Peter Sellers in the earlier Pink Panther films. And one thing that Richard was very good at, in particular, and is probably most renowned for, particularly in the West, his comedy roles. And comedy, particularly visual comedy, was something that he absolutely excelled at. You don't have to look at too many of his films to know that that was the case. Richard Ng was born in Guangzhou in China on 17th of December 1939 and moved to the United Kingdom when he was a teenager, and as a result of that, he like Michelle Yeoh and Maggie Cheung, who did a similar thing in their earlier life. Like those two, he managed to speak perfect English as a result, and it looks like Richard Ng's first on-screen appearance was in a 1974 film called either Golden Needles or The Chase for the Golden Needles, which was directed by Robert Klaus, who had directed Enter the Dragon the year previously, the film that starred Bruce Lee. But his Hong Kong debut was not long after that, when he appeared in The Private Eyes, which came out in 1976 and was directed by Michael Hui. And that that helped, and that was the first film in which he got to work with Sammo Hung in any capacity. And he also directed, and Richard Ng also directed Murder Most Foul in 1979. However, it was when he appeared as the character called Exhaust Pipe in Winners and Sinners in 1983 that he really started to fine tune his comedic capabilities, and the scene in which his character thinks he's invisible is worth a look all by itself, even if you're not keen on the rest of the film. And honest to God, his comic timing and reactions are, and facial expressions are what make that scene alone so special. Although he's a joy, he's generally been a joy to watch throughout. And Winners and Sinners was pretty much the thing that set off the Lucky Stars series. In fact, within the Chinese title of Winners and Sinners are the characters Sing, which actually translates to 5 lucky stars, which in itself is a reference to an aspect of Samo's youth, in which he was one of the 7 little fortunes while training under Master Yu Jim-yun at the Peking Opera School, with other luminaries such as Jackie Chan and Yun Bu, both of whom have... Well, Jackie has a supporting role in Winners and Sinners, and Yun Bu has a very brief appearance later on in the film. But in all intents and purposes, Winners and Sinners is a Sammo Hung movie through and through. And after Winners and Sinners, he appeared in the likes of My Lucky Stars in 1985, its sequel Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars, which it seems was also released in 1985, and he also appeared in the likes of Wheels on Meals in 1984, and also did a slightly different style of role alongside Michelle Yeoh in 1987 when he co-starred with her in Magnificent Warriors. And 2 years after that, he also was part of an all-star cast when he was cast as Police Inspector Ho in Jackie Chan's directorial masterpiece Miracles, which is also known as either Miracles: The Canton Godfather, Just the Canton Godfather, or Mr. Canton and Lady Rose. And as I said earlier, that film is something that potentially likened him to being Hong Kong's cinema's answer to Peter Sellers, and doing his sort of like his equivalent of the Inspector Clouseau character from the earlier Pink Panther films. He also appeared in several other films, even as the 80s gave way into the 90s, although some of them are more of the Lucky Stars franchise that didn't really make it to international waters. Mainly because the kind of humour that's in them doesn't really translate across languages. Not this necessarily offensive per se, but any humour that relies on extensive knowledge of Chinese culture or everything is unlikely to really gain any traction elsewhere in the world, because that kind of knowledge would be hard to for people outside of the Chinese speaking territories to particularly understand or relate to, so the humour just wouldn't work. But Richard Ng also appeared alongside Jet Li, Rosamund Kwan and the like in Once Upon a Time in China and America in 1997. That's one of the few films throughout the 90s which did get an international release. And he also had a brief appearance with the English equivalent of his name that's based on his Mandarin name. He was billed as Richard Wu when he briefly appeared in the 2003 Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life, alongside Angelina Jolie, playing the famous Lara Croft character made famous by Core Design's Tomb Raider series 7 years earlier. and he didn't it looks as if he didn't have a huge amount of problem getting film work even in his later years. And that pretty much continued until he decided to call time on his career in 2022, and according to what Frank Jeng said on an audio commentary for, I think it was the UK Blu-ray release of Magnificent Warriors, that he hadn't been well and had been suffering from renal failure, and that alone would have caused him to have to take a back seat from the film industry that had been in such a significant part of his life for so long. And he certainly left a great big body of work behind. And some of those, particularly the likes of those films in which he appeared in films with Sammo Hung's involvement, such as the aforementioned Lucky Stars series and Winners and Sinners and Wheels on Meals and the like. It's really good that we have those to look back on. Sadly, though, on 9th of April 2023, which was Easter Sunday, at the age of 83, Richard Ng sadly died after going into cardiac arrest, from which doctors were unable to save him. And and at the time of recording this, the 9th of April 2023 was just 2 years. It's like 2 days ago. 2 years, and of course, as a lover of Hong Kong classic Hong Kong movies myself, it is very sad that this guy who was so good at his comedic roles, and in particular, and left some very visual humour that just translates so well into other cultures and internationally. And yes, it is a shame that that we've lost him. To me, he became a legend in his own right, just in different ways. And even when he was taking part in action scenes, such as in Winners and Sinners and My Lucky Stars, not only did Sammo manage to pack him with power to make his punches and so forth look believable and strong enough to hurt, but Richard Ng's humour that he also managed to inject into those bits is also something that helps him to stand out, even though he wasn't really a martial artist or even on-screen fighter in quite the same way that his luminaries like Sammo Hung and the like in those same films might have been. So anyway, I really enjoy. As I said, I really enjoyed watching Richard Ng performances on film, and no matter how many times I watch Richard Ng in films like those I've mentioned, I never truly tire of him, and even if I know what's going to happen, somehow somehow his comedic excellence and general presence and his facial expressions are just what makes his role so special to me. I mean, the kind of double taking reaction he does at one particular point in Millionaires Express, which came out around 1987, and that film is also known as Shanghai Express, and that too had a bit of an all-star cast. Sorry, 1986. But I can't really go into scenes. It's hard to describe. But anyone who's seen the film will know exactly the bit I mean. Or there's only one bit I could be referring to when it comes to that bit. But yeah, so that was basically a brief tribute to Richard Ng, aka Ng Yiu-Hon, aka Wu Yao-Han, who sadly passed away on Easter Sunday 2023. I hope people enjoy this little tribute video I did, and hope to catch you on another video soon. Texie88 out.